So, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Ashish Kotari, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. So I am working currently at Capital One as a senior data analyst, and I am a data enthusiast. I enjoy working around data and to see what is there to come up with strategies using data and everything. So we are seeing how the world is transforming and taking data into consideration for each and everything these days. And handling big data can be a big issue or can be a boon. So that depends on how we handle the big data and how we process it. So the today's session is going to be all about big data and how to use it, what are the pros and cons of big data. And moving forward, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Faisal Rahman Khatak, who is a data scientist lead, and we will have a short introduction from him too.
Hey Ashish. Hey guys. Thank you, Ashish, first for giving me an opportunity to talk about myself. So yeah, my name is Faisal Aman Khatak, and I'm currently leading a team of data science analytics and share mobility, which is specifically related to geospatial data sciences. And yeah, we are kind of working on amazing things. And yeah, I'm excited to speak in Boston Startup Week, and hopefully, I will share interesting things with you.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, that was a good quick introduction. And so, even if you guys have any questions, please try to leave it in the Q&A and we will take up the questions as we go ahead with the sessions. We would like to make it as interactive as possible. So, moving and starting the session, first question is like, what is big data according to you, and what are your perspective on big data?
So, according to me, so big data, there are two things which I want to classify like uh, big data and good data. So, for me, big data is a large volume of data with a variety and with a high velocity, with a high flow. So, these are the three V's which usually defines the big data. And according to that, so if you have a large amount of data with a good flow and data is from different sources and data is of different kinds, for example, so structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data. In structured data is transactional tabular data. In unstructured data, for example, you have text data, you have here images data, and semi-structured data is kind of data, for example, JSON mixed with the transactional tabular format of data. So this is kind of a variety of different varieties of data. And in terms of velocity, if you are, for example, having a high flow of data in terms of streaming, in terms of transactions, so this is explaining the velocity of data. What are the number of hits like per second? So this will explain what is the velocity of the data, and related to volume, that what is the size of the data. So these are the three parameters which usually will take for explanation of big data, and that's how we explain big data. And big data is everywhere in relevant to these three V's, which I explained. For example, our social media data, our browsing data, and for example, vehicle tracking data, data in shopping malls. For example, they have cameras installed there, and our transactions. So big data is everywhere. That's a kind of brief introduction of big data, how we define it, and what is data.
Okay, so whenever we hear about big data, people like imagine like huge and tons of data. So do you think like whatever data is coming into picture, is it useful? Like every time, each and everything is useful, or what do you say about that?
Yeah, coming back again to big data and good data. Like big data is not always good data. So what you will have to do initially, it's hard to identify like whether this data gonna be 100% useful or not. So
Okay.
after that, like what resources do, like data scientists, analytics developer, they find the good data from the big data. But initially you don't have an option. So what you do, you collect the data, because that's the power. Also in future you don't know that this big data, which is not good data now, can be an opportunity in future, can open new line of inquiries, can give good trends. Example would be from Nokia, that they were having a big amount of data related to the non-smartphone, uh, and they were having very less data of smartphones, and it was presented like it was the idea was presented like we should switch our market to smartphone. But unfortunately they were unable to, they were kind of biased towards big data because they were having big data available related to keypad phone. So what happened, that good data was missed. So big data is useful, as well as you will have to open your eyes for the new kind of data and kind of find innovative ways to collect new data. So yeah, you will have to find innovative ways to use that big data, but initially you don't have an option. Yeah, you try to create different techniques that you are the right kind of data you are collecting. You try to write your use cases to collect right kind of data, to extract right kind of data. But initially, like it's a trade-off between the resources, and the processing storage power you're gonna use.
So whenever when we say about big data, so how does big data play a role in startups, and how would you define what will be the right time to integrate more big data applications or technology in a startup? So like for example, whenever we say like big companies, established company already have a process where they are using big data technologies to process the data and use it in a strategical manner, and they have small teams for each and every task. So when it comes to a startup, how does a startup should handle big data in the first place, like, and the secondly, when should they integrate all the big technologies or any applications of big data? What point of startup they should integrate those?
Uh, yes, so related to startup, it's really it's nowadays really a good question, because startup usually fight like between like when we start using big data practices. So, uh, related to startups, a big data developer or the big data technologies they're going to be using. So it's related to the resource, the big data developer or big data engineer. Is he will be working on a like kind of role which will be wearing many hats. So, uh, first thing related to role. Second, that when startup should uh, uh, use big data technologies and hire resources for big data. This is another part of question. Like I explained the big data, that what defines big data. In startup, you usually don't have that much of data. But what you can do, you can start using the practices of big data, because in future this can be power. Like you will have to run the company in a data-driven approach.
So
So first thing,
what practices do you mean? Like what kind of do you think we should start? They should start creating different teams already, or they should start creating the procedure and how to process in case of any data comes in, like whatever the size may be. So
yeah.
are you talking about the procedure or the teams inside the startups?
Yeah, related to procedures, like you, so first in startups, like you will have to find innovative ways to collect the data. So that's the starting point. So because
Yeah.
the data is collected in agile manner, so it evolved with the passage
Mm.
of time. So you have to keep this in mind with the development approaches, that you have to collect data and improve collection of data in agile manner. So first thing is that. Second, you can start using big data technology even in startup if your domain related data is publicly available. There are marketplaces where different companies are selling their data, so you can use that data. And you can scrap the data, for example, from different webs which is relevant to your startup domain, and you can use that data to identify that next possible good sales location. So you can collect. So it depends on you, that you're going to start implementing big data technologies from the very start in your startup, and you are like data driven person, you are crazy about data, and you know the power of the data and you have resources, so you can start it from the very first day. But if you are growing in agile manner, step by step, you don't have resources, you don't have capacity, you don't have funding. So what you will have to do, create innovative ways that you are collecting data in the right manner.
Okay. So, whenever we say there's big data in each industry, and what industry is making the least progress in using it, and why do you think that?
Yeah. So the least progress in sense like what industry is making the least progress, I think so nowadays, like every industry is leveraging the big data. For example, the banking, the medical so I worked 2 years for medical industry. So we were having a lot of data. So they are leveraging, the banking sector is leveraging. But what I personally think that where we can improve more in terms of data is analytical processing with videos. So I think so they're working there are different technologies, which different researchers are working really hard to make it efficient. And the reason behind this is that resources. So that's one of the another thing, it's expensive.
But I would like I have heard a lot about it. Like healthcare industry, you can say there's like n number of data, and because since patient history is always since they are born, the patient history started. So that kind of huge amount of data. So do you really think like healthcare industry is making the use of it completely? And if yes, how would you justify that? Because I still believe that there are so many, like so much of data for healthcare industry that they have just started processing. For example, if they want to see what are the what can be the causes, or what can be the uh, this person will have will be a diabetic person in future or not, by seeing the history of data since they have been born, so they do have access to that kind of a data. So do you think they are using it to that level or not?
So the problem with healthcare industry is that you have to be very precise about things. So
Yeah.
precision is really important in healthcare because it's you are working for life. So that's
Hmm.
the important thing. But in the business, you have the leverage of confidence. Like you can be 80% confident and you can go with that.
Yeah.
So medical industry is working on, but in terms of resources, in terms of getting things done 100% accurate. So that's one of the challenge, that you have to be working in a way to get 100% accuracy, precision, regard. You have to consider all these things. That's one of the reason that healthcare industries, it seems like they are lacking in it. But yeah, so in terms of like this, you can say that there we can work more and improve the precision, improve the existing systems for life.
Okay. Yeah. And do you think like how big data is helping to translate into what we do we say, like is big data helping us to translate into increasing the business revenue or anything like that? Do you agree on that? How, and if
Ye-
yes, how does it do it?
yes, so I agree on that. Not because that I am a data scientist, uh, but but if you look, like for example, if I give you some use case and example that is really helpful, even though the audience we don't understand the data science practices and the big data practices, they can have idea because in real life they are using. For example, one would be the Facebook recommendation model. So what would be the next
Hmm.
post? So the next post is relevant to the post you are currently interested in. You will definitely take a look over there. And for example, recommendation engines. So with recommendation engines, if you are searching something and the relevant information come in the first page, so you're gonna click most probably. So it will increase the page view. For example, customer churn prediction. It's a model used in different industry to identify the actual churn of the customers before it happens. So you kind of so if you know that these are the customers who are going to leave us, so you kind of give promotions and kind of offer different things, so they're going to stay with you. So you have an option to make your customers stay with you, so customer retention can be improved. And related to other business, for example, you anticipate the demand in the location, you might have chance to use Uber. So in Uber, what they are doing, for example, they are identifying that what is the in demand area. So if there is
Mhm.
high demand, so they can use their vehicle in optimum order, so they're gonna push their
So
drivers to the right place.
for the real-time decisions using data, so do you think that startups can implement this kind of a thing in the beginning of their sessions? Because these are established companies we are talking about, like Facebook or Uber. So they are using real-time data and implementing it immediately. That can, what do you think that will be a costlier thing for the startups to implement in the beginning?
I have seen startup using their transactional data to
Okay.
make the real time decision. So
Mhm.
related to the real time decision making, in terms of business, you can do it directly on your transactional data if you have very less amount of data, let's suppose. So you can do this,
Yeah.
but there are technologies available with the big data. So with the big data, you will need resources, you will need technologies which is expensive, you have a lot of data, you need processing power for that. So it will get expensive, so you kind of do trade off. If you have big data, you have resources, so you're gonna use transactional data or you're gonna go for all app model. So you kind of decide this way.
Okay, and so when we talk about this kind of decision making skills that this big companies have an advantage over like established companies. So how do startups compete in this area? Suppose being a marketplace like Facebook already has a marketplace. So suppose a startup related to similar marketplace, if it
Mm.
comes up, but the data to their extent is limited. So how do they compete in this market? Like when they have limited sources of data. So do you have any like way to tackle this, or how we can gain more efficiency in using the limited data? What would be your take on that?
So my take would be on that for example, first you can go for the publicly available data, but if that data is not helping you out, so my example would be same. For example, launching a new product or not finding a new opportunity. So Nokia had that much amount of data, but very less pattern of a smartphone. So smartphones were launched, different companies. The best thing about startup is that you can change really quickly. uh, that's the best thing about startup. So with the big companies, they can't change things really quickly, so there is a whole lot of process involved in it, so they can't change really quickly. And I think so that's the key item available with the startup. So I think so there is opportunity available, and we can do things accordingly.
Okay. Yeah. So also when we talk about like how data, so what, how, as per the growth in data, what new technologies or advances we can see in the future. So based on big data, so how can it apply for startups and for example, big data use in AI these days? So how can startups use this kind of a technology and what technologies they should implement in the first beginning phase using data?
This is a good question. So there are solutions for such scenarios that you're going to use big data technologies. An example would be, for example, if you can't build your data house and the provisions instance, for example, in a machine on a machine. So what you can do, you can go for serverless approach. It will scale. So different cloud providers, services providers are giving you the serverless computational opportunity, which can scale uh, with the amount of data you are providing. So for example, BigQuery, so Amazon serverless, Redshift, and there are different other technologies available in terms of reporting. So Amazon QuickSight, it is now serverless as well, which is reporting related in terms of collection data. So they there are opportunities for startups as well, so they can initially go for serverless approach. When data scales up, so they can go for other approaches, they can start using it. There are different processing systems, so they can accordingly scale and start using it. So there are opportunities available for startups as well.
Okay. So when it comes to storage, that can be a huge problem because we are generating terabytes of data each and every day, and it will keep on increasing as we are going. And the number of social media, or the number of websites, or the whatever the data tracking has increased to another level these days. So do you think there will be a storage problem coming up for storing this kind of humongous data in future?
I personally think no, and I would try to give an example with the help of
Sure.
data. A data point is,
Yeah.
for example, in mid 70s, the biggest supercomputer on the earth was having size Cray 1 was having size of 8 MB primary memory and 303 MB of secondary storage. It's mid 70s. It's the biggest supercomputer on earth. But if I ask you that, what is the storage of mobile phone in your pocket? I think so. This year, the mobile phones are launched. It's normally like 1 TB or 500 GB. So if you compare it, it's 1,000 times more in the terms of storage, 1,000 times more in terms of processing. It's 1,000 times more in streaming, and so I think so. It won't be a challenge, but the cost is a challenge now for startup. For example, they can't really jump into the tools and technologies uh, because of the some sort of that they go and balance the cost and they choose technologies according to that. But in future, I think so. It won't be a big problem. But there are other challenges available. Like we still use the soft skill, for example, different architectures that is storage efficient or processing efficient, for example, normalization and denormalization of schemas, the way you are storing your data. So I think so in future it won't be a challenge, but the problem is that quality of data is changing. The quality of data is alongside changing as well as with the storage. So but overall I think it won't be a challenge.
Okay, so here we have an interesting question in the Q&A. So Nikhil is asking, like, is there a measurement yardstick that tells the startup they are now in big data territory or need to start investing in? So, like, how do the startups know? Basically, he's trying to ask, how do the startups know that they are already here and now they have to start investing in big data and analysis? So, what will be that stage when they realize that now they are stepping into more humongous data and
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so first thing is when I look for such thing is the domain. So first thing
Okay.
is domain, and second thing is how much resources you have available in terms of employees, in terms of, for example, funding for a startup. So and for example, it is related to the data startup. So there are a lot of data oriented startups in the market. So I will first classify in these categories. Then I will see that I'm dependent on data. Data would be the only solution. So I can get data from external sources, I can buy data. So yeah, that's the point. You can start it from the very first day. But if you have
Okay. But
limited rows,
like big data will be always available. Even if you are just starting, there will be a large amount of data is already available in the market for the similar kind of things. So how do a startup know particularly that their stage is right now to invest more and more into data, and that can help them grow very quickly as far as what they have done so far?
okay. So I can share an example of my one of my recent project. Uh,
Okay.
so that would help probably. From the day one, how I planned. So it recently scored like $10 million in funding. So and that project was more more data oriented, more data driven project. And this project was about to create a product for organizations so they can best optimize their employees commute process, their routes by themselves. So this was the idea, and how I supported it with the data. So I scraped the wages data from all over the world. I scrapped the gas data, gas prices data, and I scrapped a lot of data, geospatial census data. We have the shapes data. That's how the different blocks on the earth is divided with geospatial boundaries. So that all kind of data I tried to pull all kind of data, and then I tried to support my uh, project with the help of that data to provide analytics on the top of routes, so that they can create routes. For example, they can hire from the right place, which is having, for example, minimum wage, and there are lack of opportunities, there are lack of public transportation available. So I scrap the GTFS, the General Transit Field Specification data, which is publicly available for the public transit system of the United States. So I started from the very first day, and some projects, like, you have to first understand that what is the problem you are currently solving. So that's the first thing. Otherwise, you can leverage your existing databases as well. For example, if I say, rather than creating a data warehouse, if you are having couple of tables, you can create a view over 10 tables. So in databases, you can create a view which is aggregatively storing your data. So
Okay.
that's where you try to find the balance.
Mm. No, that sums up the question, and that was very well answered by the. So again, we have another question. Like when you were explaining like data storage problem in the future, and you might have used the word quality of the data is changing. So what do you mean by
Quality in sense, for example, at that point of time, what would be the size of an image, and
that?
what
Okay.
would be the pixels. But now it is changed. So that defines the quality of data, like how much granular you can go towards the pixel and look into it. So that granularity. So we have now, I think so. We can't say like we have the good quality of data now. Maybe in future there is something else. So that's how quality is improving in terms of data.
Okay. And so, is big data affecting the privacy of the people? If so, what are some best practices to keep such data safe and secure? So we
Yeah.
all know, like we are all using social media or any website. So there are like data tracking. Even if you just speak around your mobile phone, the microphone will catch and start showing you advertisement related to it. So how do you think it is affecting the privacy of the people? And what measures should startup
Yeah,
take in the early stages?
it's very like a hot topic, hot question. So in terms of privacy, like, I would say, like, big data and little privacy. That's the era we are living in.
Okay.
Related to, yeah, related to privacy. If I give you an example, you gave an example related to different social media platforms. You're gonna speak, and for example, they're gonna record it. And I'm not sure. I haven't tried that. Is there any option available where I can turn it off? So I think so. I don't have a kind of option.
There is
Otherwise,
an option. No, no,
I
there is an option. It's just very deep. You have to go like lot of you have to go through a lot of things. Then you will get there, and you will have an option to switch it off.
okay. So so a lot of people don't know about it,
Yeah.
right? So you will have to open a debate, a discussion where we can discuss such things. And I think so that's the first place where we can improve our privacy, because we have big data, and it's getting huge, and you have very little privacy. I would like to give an example. In 2009, there was a research in MIT, in which they were able to predict sexual orientation on on base of your gender and gender of your friends list. you know that minimal amount of data, it don't include any personal information, any other information. That minimal amount of data, with that they were able to predict sexual orientation. For me, it won't be a problem, but it can be a privacy problem for my friend. So when
Mhm.
we are giving data, it's not just about us, it's about our surrounding as well. That we either we are violating some privacy or not. So I would like Google recently did very well job in Europe. So they were able to create a panel, chief data officers, to discuss with the government, because Europe is really strict about the privacy, to discuss with panels that what would be the privacy policy. And some organization are outsourcing. For example, they are giving notices when collecting the data. They are telling that what we're going to do with the data and stuff like that. But I think so it's a big question, and we should open debate on this. That we should know as the big data, we should know as the big privacy, we should know about it.
So I was asking like morely like so what are some best practices the startups can inculcate in the very beginning to avoid such things? So to avoid privacy issues or to avoid NPI, they say non-public information to make that secure. So what are the some measures or practices they should start?
So I think so fair privacy principle kind of rules. There are rules available that could help. Like the world focus on that what data you are collecting, what you are gonna do with my data is gonna be helpful for me or no. So it's a kind of world focus is on that what you are collecting and what you gonna do with my data. So what you can do, you can create notice, you can push privacy policies before collecting the data. So there are a couple of practice available. You write in agreements and stuff like that. You with that you can, but problem is that even you don't know what you're gonna do with data.
Yeah.
Maybe in future you're gonna use it for some other purpose, for launching innovative products, something else. So it's a kind of debate where we have to get mature ourselves, and there is an area.
Okay. So, like, as we are saying, do you also agree like the data industry is going to grow more from here? And what is the scope of the data industry moving ahead in the future?
Obviously, like I would say, exponential growth in terms of, for example, if I say that uh, hundreds of years back, that what is the history of Columbus, that he traveled which way. So what was his track path of traveling around the globe? I don't know. Maybe in some books there are some historical writings, but we don't know the data points. We are not exactly sure about it. But let's suppose if you, after 100 years, if you ask like where Faisal Rahman Khattak traveled around the globe, so you will be able to answer this question, even with very minimum with every seconds data point. So this
Okay.
will enormously grow, and this would be an example. We can oversample it with the other domains as well, with healthcare data, with the telecommunication data, so autonomous vehicles. With that data, how much uh, we are driving, and our best practice would be used to create autonomous vehicles, and it will enormously grow exponentially.
Okay. So when we talk about like the growth opportunities in data, so as you mentioned, there are a lot of growth opportunity, and it's just gonna go ahead more and more since we are starting to use data in such an innovative way and strategically. So when it comes to career-wise, so what are the opportunities available in the data field, and how would you define like multiple roles in the data field?
Career wise, I think so. I think so. It's in this area, in this era. I think so. It will help in automation as well as it is helping in a lot of things. Um, for most of the companies, only they are only surviving on data. I have
No,
seen companies they are only surviving.
I'm asking about like a personal career goal, like for different roles like data engineer. So how do you define all those roles, and what are the differences between them?
Yeah. So I'm coming to it. So companies are crazy about data. If there is data,
Mhm.
so you will have to leverage the power of data to best support your company in terms of profit. So for that, um, opportunities available in terms of ETL developers, BI developer, big data engineers, data scientists. data analytics, even though data scientists are divided in multiple categories. For example, it's a commercial data scientist, it's a geospatial data scientist. So a lot of categories available in career option. So in terms of the flow, so how the even though annotators and data collection experts, so chief data officer, there are another lot of roles coming in the market. So people are understanding that what are the needs, and it's evolving and evolving. So if you see the trend, that is one of the uh, so if you see on the job market, so when I was exploring the wages data, so I was able to see the trend of big data posts, like data related position posts. It was like 50 times more than the other position. So it's a great
Okay.
career, and you can automate things. You can do interesting things with that. You can innovate new things. You can collect more data. You can bring more opportunities. The more data scientists they are hiring, they are creating more opportunities. I have seen a company which is actually decreasing the amount of data developers, the data scientists. I have seen the companies, they are exponentially growing now, even though it's getting bigger as IT department. So it's an independent department inside the company, in competition with IT developers people. So I think so there is huge power, a lot of opportunities, new line of inquiries, and it's a great career you can work in.
So what is the so yeah, definitely you define multiple rules, like those are end to end. So I would like to understand like what is the beginning, since what which role is involved in the first beginning of collecting till we make a strategy and we are able to give it to the stakeholders or use it in the own company. So what is that pipeline? How would you explain what role comes into picture and at what stage it comes into picture?
Okay. So initially, I would say like data collection. So you should know, like you can hire data collection engineers. You can find innovative ways with the help of him, that what would be the innovative ways to collect data. For example, ETL engineer who gonna help you to migrate your data from one place to another in a transform way. ETL developer is doing interesting things. And after that, there are big data engineers, data scientists. They're gonna leverage that data. There are Python data developers. They're gonna help you migrate data where other ETL approaches fail. For example, Python data will scrap the data from the websites. Um, there are data scientists who going to be working on writing predictive and descriptive analytics related algorithms that are going to help your company. There are BI developers who are going to create visualization for you. There are data analysts. They're going to perform analysis on top of your big data with the help of SQL, with the help of other statistical approaches available, Python. So that's how the flow works. And at the end, there are also executive interpretation level roles, where you can interpret the visuals to the upper management, to the stakeholder they are driving the company. So a lot of roles available. That's how the flow works.
Okay, if someone has to start today without any background in data, so what would you recommend? Like, what will be their tail? Like, how should they start and how should they get into data field?
So first thing is, what is your background in terms of education? For example, if you don't have any expertise in data, so usually, for example, you are from the mathematics background. Let's suppose you are from the business background. You are doing BBA, MBA. So after, for example, how I divide data sciences. For example, if I'm giving an example, I divide data sciences. In terms of, so there are three division in data sciences available. For example, business, computation, and the math skills. So if you are from the mathematics background, you will have to work hard on the other parts, the business part and the computing part. If you are from the computing background, you will have to work a little bit hard on maths part and business. If you are from the business background, so everyone is equally participating in terms of their background of education and related to data. If you can start your entry level work with the help of SQL technology, so that will help you giving intuition that how data look like, and how you can process the data, how you perform set operations. It's a basic thing.
So, my question is basically like if there is none related background and they just want to step into data field, so what would be their first step? How should they get start learning, and what kind of technologies they should start inculcating or something like that? So that's my question.
Okay, so if they don't have any background and they want to start jumping into the data field, so SQL is used in like all of the roles which I explained. So I think the
Okay,
SQL technologies, it's a set based operations. So very simple math behind it. So you can start working in data if you understand SQL. So you can start from there.
okay. And do you agree, like being in a data field, when you're working with data, you kind of have to have an understanding and a creative mindset also to read data?
Yeah, creative and curious mindset. I would like to
Okay,
add one other word. So you have to be curious because you are finding new opportunities. Um,
okay,
the, in terms, for example, if some way is not working, some way business is not working, there might be another opportunity available where where you can grow, right? You I have seen companies, they started on some other path and then they changed their path and they were growing. So you have to be curious to explore. So you have data available, try to spend like maximum time on it, try to look in a curious way, try to find it as an opportunity that you're going to invent some new thing. So I think so curiosity is another important part that you can do with data.
okay. And so when someone is presenting you analysis, so how do you rate a good analytical strategy coming up from the data, and how would you understand that is? So do you always support what the data says, and how do you manage that? So what is the analytical perspective when it comes outcome?
So analytical perspective would be like um, looking the data from multiple dimensions for multiple perspectives. Uh, for example, OLAP cube, which is a tech term, you store data in a
Okay,
way that you can look it with multiple dimension, right? Multiple dimension in example would be that, for example, there are sales, for sales by demographic, sales by location, sales by customers, sales by uh, different other categories of products, like which product is like most sold. So you see data from multiple dimension, and you can also see data from the dimension which is not available with your data. For example, you can see the sales from weather dimension. Weather impacting our sales or not. So with weather you can look around different festivals dimension. For example, is there any festival which is affecting our sales or not? So you can look around the date dimension. So you have to be analytical, you have to find new ways, you have to use existing ways with your internal data and try to see data from maximum perspectives available.
okay. So basically, last couple of questions. I would like to ask, like, what are the key roles that a startup should inculcate? Like, what are the key positions they should fill in to start a data team in a startup?
So key role for the startup. So most of the startup like follows a person who is wearing many hats. So he's a kind of
Yeah.
data enthusiast, which will be happy to dive into many things, which will be happy to build infrastructure, and he is curious to and his adaptive quality is high. So he is adaptable. He with the new things he can evolve because initially it's very agile. uh, so there they can start. And related to implementation of big data, how we can benefit of big data, so explaining it a little further, you set your business objectives before doing anything. So first set your business objective, so where you gonna use this big data. And second would be assess your current business stage. For example, what are your data sources? um, what are the skills of employees currently in your company? So kind of write question and assess your current business stage, how much data is available. That would be write the use cases where you want to leverage the data. For example, campaign optimization, you want to leverage it in identifying new sales locations. So write down all the use cases where you're going to use big data. So after that, then try to create a roadmap implementing data warehouse, data lakes, data marts, and after that train your people. So that's the process. You can start using big data and you will start.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. Like you gave a lot of information for startups to start with. They might have got many insights what initially they should take into look at and how they should try to transform their small teams into bigger teams and how they should try to inculcate big data, like about privacy also. That was a good question and answer session there. So any like would you like to share like how did you get into data scientist field and how did you climb up the ladder, how did you start, so that that way people like attending students who will be looking forward to getting into a data scientist field, how they can get into there.
I started. I think so. Why I'm here and attending the session in Boston because I started this way. I remember like 5 years back, I started the same way, and I was attending a session. And after this, like I wanna go into this field. I was exploring it. I spent like a month in it. I was able to assess myself, and I said like I'm going into this field during my university days. It was like third year of my university. So I started the same way you guys would be starting in future. That's from my side.
So what would be your tips and tricks to like to break this role and get into this role like during interview, what would be your tips and tricks, what would you like the participants to concentrate on?
Yeah, related to interviews. So interviews and practical work uh, in terms of data, both I found little different. I
Okay.
personally found maybe but I have seen some, I have discussed with developers, so it's pretty much same. So with interview, you will have to prepare on the things like quantitative kind of analytics. So you will have to focus on that. You will have to build your analytical skills. You will try to solve statistical problems, and most of the interviews are related to statistical and probabilistic related questions. So you can build your analytical skills over there. uh, Related to data, you can stick to one technology and work on it, so you are able to pass any certifications, or you are able to attend interviews on it, so you can go deep dive in it. um, I think so that's where you can start to build your basic statistical and probabilistic skills. So with that, you can start your learning one or two technologies. That's more than enough to get into the company, and after that, you can evolve.
Okay. Just a fun, quick question. I have it in my mind. If you were supposed to hire a data related role on your team and you are the hiring manager, what would be that one quality you would look into that person just to hire them? Like, what would be your one quality, top quality you would look into a candidate?
The top quality in the candidate I would look into, he is adaptable or not. So with the startup, like when you are growing startups, so you usually look into that quality because you are expanding in a agile manner. So I personally look into this quality, and the curiosity is the quality which is second, backing it.
So curiosity, you mean by asking questions, asking the right questions, and not assuming. And trying to figure out a more multiple ways than you define. That that defines the curiosity.
Any curiosity which helps you to minimize your loss in future. For example,
Okay.
if you are asking question, it is not helping you to grow. So that
Yeah.
curiosity is useless. So any curiosity which helps you to minimize the loss in terms of productivity. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. And I would like if anyone has any questions, they can just put it in Q&A and we can just take it up because we still have 8 minutes left. And if not, then we can wrap it up. So we'll just wait for 1 minute, a couple of minutes here. If anyone has any questions, they can definitely go ahead and put it in the chat. And any last advice for you for the startups going out and getting building their last advice? Anything you would like to say?
Related to startups, like I would like to say, like it's a era of data. So
Yeah.
when you are building a startup, focus on it's challenging to in future to find innovative ways to collect the data. It's agile approach. With the passage of time, you are able to identify the areas where you can collect data. From the very first day, try to be a data driven company. So try make data driven decisions, not heuristic decision, and that would help you to grow your startup.
Oh, that was a great example, and that should definitely help startups or any other people who is trying to get into this field and use data into an innovative way. So I think there are no questions from here. The Q&A section is done. So yeah, thank you so much for taking this opportunity and answering so much questions and helping us to understand what are the different perspectives that a person or a startup should look into before getting into data field, how to create it and how to take it ahead. So that pipeline should definitely help some of the startups and